Final hour for the week. OverDrive continues. Powered by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line of the final score. Bryan Hayes, Jamie Noodles, McLennan, Dave Feschuk of the Toronto Star. Got Battle of Ontario tomorrow night. The Oilers are back in action tonight against the Islanders. Pierre Engvall and the Islanders tonight.
Let's see. Pierre Engvall and the Islanders. That caught me off guard.
That's a marquee matchup.
That's
McDavid
right.
and the Oilers up against Engvall and the Islanders tonight.
If you said that, like right now, because it's 6 o'clock, I think the game's at 7:30. Patrick Waugh is sitting in the coach's room right now looking at a whiteboard.
Yep.
And if you walked in, if he had the show on and you said Pierre Engvall and the Islanders, what do you think the look on his face would be? Like,
it would probably be a look of disbelief, is what it would be. Because, he's charting up a plan tonight saying, all right, if McDavid's on the ice, Engvall can't be. If Draisaitl's on the ice, Engvall can't be. If Henrique's on the ice, Engvall can't be.
I'm telling you right now, Engvall's scoring. He's scoring tonight.
He will. He'll snipe tonight. Game winner tonight.
Yeah.
And I will give him full credit on Monday. I will 100% give him full credit.
Yeah.
So, we got that game going tonight. The Raptors in Utah tonight. And there's a lot going on. Like online, it's DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons back and forth. Where Lawrence, why don't we play this clip? Because Lawrence is he's been with the Cowboys forever, over a decade.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
And he signed in Seattle. And I don't look at the Seahawks as a team that's in Super Bowl contention. Like I don't think they'll make the playoffs this year. If they do, it'll be Sam Darnold dragging them there, which I'll believe that when I see it.
Right.
But here's what DeMarcus Lawrence had to say about maybe why he chose to leave Dallas and end up in Seattle.
Dallas is my home. I made my home there. My family lives there. I'm forever going to be there. But, I know for sure I'm not going to win a Super Bowl there. So, yeah. We here.
I know for sure I'm never going to win a Super Bowl there. That one hurts.
a little bit bitter about the departure.
Yeah, and then Parsons.
Slightly bitter.
Which is pretty wild because Parsons now, they would have been boys. They're both chasing quarterbacks around. The two of them were on the defensive line for years. And Parsons tweets out, quote tweets, this is what rejection and envy looks like. This is some clown, you know what.
Yes.
And, anyway, it is. I love a good jab at the Cowboys. You got to appreciate that. It kind of reads like he wanted to stay, though, in Dallas, and maybe Cowboys were like, I think we're going to move on here.
I mean, my thing would be, Noodles, it's one thing to say we're never going to win a Super Bowl. You were a big part of the team for 11 years.
Exactly.
A lot of that's on you, man.
Why didn't you pull your weight?
But, it's an indictment that he's like, at no time did I feel like we were going to win here. That might be – now that's a parting shot maybe, but it's just like, man, oh, man, that is – I don't know. 11 years you're there, and you make a comment like that.
On the way out, exactly. You're a revered player, and now people in Dallas, Cowboy fans are sensitive to that stuff. They can chirp their team. They don't want former players leaving to chirp their team. Those are kind of the rules. So I am curious to see what his future looks like in that market. Yeah. But he said it's still his home. He's going back. He'll live there for a long time, but never going to win with the Cowboys.
That's a tough comment. Jerry Jones might call him, though. Don't you think Jones he'd hear that comment, regardless if he's on the team or not? Jerry Jones would call him.
He might.
Have a personal,
or he'll say something publicly. Jones will address it, right?
Yes.
Someone will stop him on the street with a microphone, and he'll start talking. All right, Cory Schneider here in a moment. It is Pie Day 314, right? So the pie charts, this is my new thing. I'm going to exclusively own this in the market, in the country for that matter. I don't think anyone else is bringing pie charts to the table the way I am. So this is the pie chart in terms of Leafs concerns before the playoffs. This is how I would allot, I have 100%, I got a pie in front of me. This is how I would distribute the percentages in terms of what my concerns are. Doesn't mean they can't be fixed, can't be rectified. What I'm saying is something's got to give here. 40% of the pie is the play of Auston Matthews. Wow. I have 40% simply on his plate.
Big slice.
It's as big as it gets for the most part because I look at him, what he represents, what he's got to be, what he's got to do, what's on the line for him, the core, the whole legacy of the core four.
Right.
Over the next, between 2, 3, 4 months, a lot of it's going to be determined here. What happens with Marner in the future, what they do with Tavares, and he has got to be the guy who leads the way. He's got to be the best scorer in the world in the playoffs, something he has not done before. Like, that's what also makes this difficult to kind of envision working out, and I'm hopeful it will for his case and for the Leafs' case, is that he's been the best regular season goal scorer for a long time. That has not carried over to the playoffs.
Not at all.
Right.
Like, he hasn't elevated his goal scoring prowess in the playoffs. It has fallen off when he's been healthy and rocking and going into the playoffs feeling great. So I got 40% the play of Auston Matthews down the stretch, 30% who they play in the first round. 30% of this pie chart is who they're going to play in the first round.
So opponent, right?
Opponent, yes. Is it going to be Florida? Is it going to be I don't see a scenario where they play Florida personally.
Probably not.
I don't think Florida's going to, draw like Tampa is going to end up in that one. See, it could happen. Tampa's a very good team, but I think Florida either finishes 1 or 2 in the division. And my guess would be they probably end up winning the division. So I don't see Florida in the first round, but it's possible. If they play them, they'd be an underdog. How big of an underdog will determine, but they'd definitely be an underdog. And Tampa, they feel pretty good about the way that they're playing against them, and they have in the past. But if it's Ottawa, I mean, obviously we know that there's a variety of choices, and if it's the 1 seed, the 2 seed, the 3 seed, home ice, 30% who they play in the first round. 20% is the form of the goalies, the way the goalies are playing the rest of the way. I think is important here. Like, I think with a tandem noodles, you want to make sure that you got one of them popping, ideally both, but you can't have neither guy feeling good.
Yeah, no, it certainly is. A lot of times it's who you trust. If they're at the height of their game, I've mentioned it. Stolarz is going through a bit of a market correction. Wool has had that as well, and it goes hand in hand with the team. But a guy who can speak to tandems is Cory Schneider. He's literally been in a scenario. He's a starting goaltender. He's been with Louis. I mean, he can talk about the vibe between that healthy competition, but also being the guy and having to carry the load.
He can. Let me just quickly finish the pie chart. All right, 10% lines and D pairings, because I still think that's undetermined. Exactly how these are going to play out. Who's playing? Is it going to be Yarncrook on the second line? Where is McMahon going to go? What's going to happen with Pacioretty if and when he's healthy? Who's going to be on that third pairing? Is it going to be Benoit? Do you put Myers in there?
Can Carlo elevate Riley?
If not, are they going to split them up? Do you move Ekman-Larsson up? Like, there's still a lot to be determined there. So I've got 10% of that pie chart would be how the D pairings and the lines still kind of shake out, because there's still some questions in terms of what they're going to do there.
Absolutely.
All right,
Great chart.
I think the pie chart, I'm
chart.
very bullish on these pie charts.
I love it.
I think weekly they come out.
Kind of making me hungry. Is that like a pizza pie, a blueberry pie? What are we looking at?
Possibly. That's the intro that we got to work on.
Yeah.
Right? We got to come up with some sort of a bunch of pies, and we'll make something happen here. All right, here's longtime NHL goalie. You see him on NHL Network. Here's Cory Schneider. What's happening, Cory?
Not much, gentlemen. How you guys doing?
We're doing pretty well. We were just talking about the Leaf goaltending and the status of the Leafs goalies, as we inch closer to the playoffs here. And they're kind of unique compared to the other big boys in their division, where Allmark's going to be the guy in Ottawa, and Bobrovsky in Florida, and Vasilevskiy in Tampa. Do you have a read on who's the number one, or who has the best bet to be the number one, Joseph Woll or Anthony Stolarz?
I mean, my money would be, assuming they're both healthy, that Stolarz would get the first crack at it. I heard Jamie talking about tandems in the playoffs and how that works. I'm sure he's been a part of those. And to me, it's tricky to do a full-on tandem in the playoffs. We saw last year with Ullmark and Swayman. If a guy loses, you immediately go to the other guy. If a guy wins, you're going to take him out. So I think you got to have the guy. And for me right now, that's Stolarz. But I know Joe Woll's got some playoff experience and has played pretty well. Last year he came in for Samsonov, I believe, and almost stole that series from Boston. It's a fine line, but I would give Stolarz the first crack at it.
Yeah, I agree, Schneid. The biggest thing when it comes to goaltending is who you trust. And I've always said this before, is the team, if you have that tandem, the team will lean to one guy or the other, but it's the coach and who's playing well at that time. I like Stolarz. What have you seen from him, his progression to become, where he's at right now? Because he's had many stops throughout the league and he's become a fantastic goaltender, but it didn't happen overnight for him. He developed that and now is 30 years old.
Yeah, I mean, I played against him in Anaheim a bit and watched him in Florida in a limited role. And it's funny, you know, and you've probably been through this, but I went through it in Vancouver. Everyone's like, well, he hasn't done it yet. He hasn't played a starting workload yet. It's like, well, yeah, you never get the opportunity to. How do you know that you are? How can you prove that you are? So I think Stolarz at the age of 30 is finally getting that opportunity. I know he was out for a while with an injury, so maybe that's not a great example. But, you know, I think for a bigger guy like him, he's a big kid, and those guys take a little longer to put it all together. I feel like he's finally not just a big guy who takes up a lot of the net. He's more of a technician. His movements. He comes up with some big saves at big moments, which is also part of it. And that's part of being a starting goalie, is knowing when you got to come up with the saves, not how many you make. So I think it's progression. I think he's learned a lot from playing behind a guy like Bobrovsky and John Gibson. And I know I took things from guys like Roberto and Marty Brodeur. And it just takes a while sometimes to put it together and then get the opportunity. And he's finally gotten that opportunity here. And we're seeing what he can do. And as you guys mentioned, though, you know, maybe scuffling a little bit of late, that's part of grinding and learning and becoming a starting goalie, is working through that phase of, you know, the most games you've ever played or a higher workload.
Hey, Corey, if the playoffs started today, of course, the Leafs would be matched up against Tampa Bay, one of their old nemesis. And there's been some talk about Vasilevskiy over the past couple of years that maybe he's on the wrong side of the age curve. And yet, you know, when you looked at, you know, he got the 2-week break at the Four Nations, and there's been some evidence that he really has had a late season surge, albeit maybe, you know, some mixed results, but trending positively. Like, how intimidating is Vasilevskiy still, even if he's not the guy he was in his prime?
Yeah, he's a guy that would concern me, a guy that I wouldn't want to face if I was the opposing team. I know last year he had that back surgery, which is hard to come back from. It's hard to be yourself even once you're healed and cleared. So I think that might have played into a down year for him last year. But by all metrics and the eye test, he's been that guy again this year. And they can score too. Tampa's got a team that they can score a ton of goals. They got one of the best goal differentials in the league, and he's a big part of that. So I think, you know, he's only, I think, around 30. He's not even that old. But you mentioned at the 2-week break at the Four Nations, they didn't have a deep run last year. So, you know, he's a guy that he can dial it up when he needs to. And I think he has that big game experience that you go to a Game 7 or a big game that you got to win, and you're going against Vasi. Like, he can pull out one of those games for his team, steal a win. So he's somebody that would definitely concern me going up against him.
With Cory Schneider of the NHL Network, and this year it feels like, you know, we haven't really had the Vezina chat because Hellebuyck is just a lock. Yeah. I mean, I don't. Who would you suggest is even contesting him? Like, is there a guaranteed number 2, number 3 guy? Noodles, you can chime in too.
Well, Vasilevskiy goal saved above expectations right there as well. I mean, Logan
right
Thompson,
there,
you know, Schneider, I don't know how you feel where you're cut off for games played. That's the biggest thing for me is,
right.
You know, the separator is if a guy plays 35 or 38, that's not really starter minutes. Like, to me, it's got to at least be something with a 4 in it, 45, 47,
yes.
You know, that type of stuff. I don't know how you feel, Schneider.
No, I agree with you. I think you have to play at least half your team's game, like a bare minimum. You know, 45 to 50 is a good range for me these days. I know those guys don't play 70 like they used to very often. But, yeah, Vasi would be up there. You know, Olmark's putting together. I know he missed some time, but if they get in the playoffs, you know, he'll get some love. You know, goaltending's been pretty good around the league, I find, this year. Not a lot of controversies or teams that are in a dire need of it. You know, Thompson's a good one. He's been lights out, but like you said, the games played is an issue. Dustin Wolf out in Calgary, I think, you know, not only Calder love, I think he should get a little bit of Vezina love if he gets that Calgary team that can't score into the playoffs. So there's a good number of guys, but to your point, I do think it's a horizon job by Hellebuyck. I don't think anyone's going to even come near him, but it gets interesting after that.
I agree. You know, one, I guess, spotlight throughout the league, and because it's in Canada, the guy Stuart Skinner gets a lot of love and a lot of hate. Whether it's earned or not. What do you make of him? When you look at him just from a technical standpoint, you know, the way the Oilers defend, all of that type of stuff, you know, do you think he's a guy that can, you know, stabilize and you know, he did last year, but this year it's been wildly inconsistent. What do you see from Stuart Skinner?
Yeah, he's a guy that I've tried to watch and get a beat on. You know, I know he kind of got some heat last year, but like you said, he still got him within a game of the Stanley Cup. I think part of his thing is he's still a youngish goalie. Is he's a bit volatile. You know, his bad games can be really bad, and his good games are really good. I think you saw in the playoffs where he lost the net to Pickard for a stretch. But when he's on, he's proven he can win the big game. So I think that's what you want out of your goalie. I talked about Stolarz and how he's a big man, but he's become more of a technician. I still find Skinner's got a lot of movement, a lot of moving parts for a big goalie, which can be an issue. It can create holes. It can create creases and gaps for guys to look at and score. So for me, he does play deep at times, but then it seems like he's got a lot of movement and action in his game, which isn't always the best thing when you're his size. So I think the quieter a game he can play, when he's seeing the pucks well, I think there are times where he can get beat around the hands if he's not tracking the puck really well. So for me, it's all about his puck tracking and then just quieting his game down and not trying to do too much in there.
With Cory Schneider, we've been talking a lot about Auston Matthews today, and he's burned a lot of goalies in his career with how deceptive his shot is, how much zip he's got on it. Obviously he's got immense hockey IQ in terms of reading goaltenders and throwing them off based on what maybe he's done earlier in the year or earlier in that game. But when you're watching him play, I don't know how much you've seen him play this year, but his goal scoring is way, way down. I mean, he's maybe going to score 30 goals this year. He's had some injury issues, but he scored 69 last year. Is there anything that you see out of him that would be able to pick off why he's not scoring at the same rate he generally has throughout his whole career?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I know he's had the wrist injury issues. He's missed time this year and went overseas to get it looked at. So I don't know if that's still a problem, which obviously is probably one of, his biggest assets is he needs strong wrists to score goals for him. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I can't tell if it's just some sort of malaise or just a down year. Even, watching the Four Nations, he wasn't bad by any means. And even in the finals, he had 2 assists in that game, but I was at that game and, Eichel was the most noticeable center and I thought their best center in that tournament. Matthews just didn't really pop. He didn't make a lot of big plays or noticeable plays. So, I know he can play an understated two-way game, but offensively, I just didn't really feel as if he was himself. He wasn't very dynamic. And then he had those chances in overtime. They just didn't bury, which, a guy that's your best goal scorer, you look to score those goals. So it's hard to say if it's something, injury related or fatigue or just sometimes you just have a down year for him. It's still a good year for most guys, but he's judged by a different scale. So, I like this Leafs team this year more so in terms of their center depth with Lawton. I know he's playing wing now, but they have him there. The defense is probably better than it's been in a little while, and their goaltending is better than it's been. So I like those components, but if those guys aren't scoring in the playoffs, they're going to be in trouble.
Corey, getting back to the Leaf goaltending, I mean, one of the big topics, not only that Stolarz hasn't played in the playoffs. I mean, he got some mop-up work in Florida, but he never started a game in the playoffs. It's also the idea that these guys haven't, neither Wall nor Stolarz has had, a sustained run where they've had to go deep into a season. They've both kind of been limited to 20-something games as their career high in a year. Like, what's the challenge for these guys in terms of just holding it together, the endurance factor here, just being able to sustain a longer season than they've ever had to play before as they head into the playoffs?
Yeah, that's that fatigue part. Not even just physical, but the mental fatigue. It takes a lot of mental energy to play goalie, and especially in the playoffs. Picture, I think Vasi said it was Vasilevskiy that one playoff game is like 2 regular season games almost in terms of what it takes out of you. And I felt that a little bit. You feel like every game is a do or die game, and afterward you're spent. I think the guys who go on those deep runs are the guys who've done it before. They know how to manage it. They know how to, approach it. So, without any playoff experience, you just have to be able to manage that mental fatigue and workload. So, I think physically these kids are all in great shape. They're all, strong and energetic. It's more that emotional energy that you expend every night. And that's the concern. If you end up in that 2-3 matchup and you play Tampa or Florida to start and you lose a game or 2 right away and the panic sets in, everyone's hooting and hollering in Toronto about what are we going to do. Like, that's the stuff as a goalie you got to block out or figure out a way to navigate. So it's going to be a test. It's definitely going to be a challenge. But like I said, we don't know until we know. So you got to give the guy a chance to go prove it. And if he doesn't, you go to Wall or, you sort of revisit it after the fact. But it is definitely, I don't say a concern, but it's an issue that, has to be thought of.
For sure. Really appreciate the insight and the time as always, Corey. We'll do it again down the road.
Sounds great, guys. Have a good night.
Cory Schneider, longtime NHL goalie. And he brings up a really good point about, when you wonder about Stolarz or Wall, more so Stolarz, because Wall actually he's played some playoff games.
Yeah, he's had 4 starts, 4 NHL.
Not an extensive resume, but he has done it. But how Stolarz reacts to the noise in the market if it goes south. Like if game 1 he gets in there and he gets shelled and they have to pull him or something, that's where Hellebuyck, Vasilevskiy, Bob, you talk about it all the time, Noodles. Those guys are like, whatever, we'll see a game 2. Like,
they've been there.
They've been there. Let's do it again. Where in this market, if it's not going well, it is going to be so loud.
Well,
and that's tough.
But he's had a dream season.
Yes.
That's the thing. So there hasn't been any type of stretch. He had one, was it Jersey he had an off game? Like he gave up 5 or something. I'm trying to remember he had an off game where it was like, I didn't have no, it was Florida. In Florida.
That was in November, yeah.
Yes, early on in the season. But it was like he didn't have his goods. But for the most part, last night was it the Makela goal? How do you do?
Yeah, Mikula. That's right down Broadway.
It is. It's down Broadway, but if you look at his motion, he's taken a step towards it, right? There's missed assignments all the way. I'm not going to lay this at his feet.
They've lost that. In the corner, you got to win that battle.
Right. But he's gotten motion there, and it's a great shot, goes high blocker. But I just, I think there is going to be a time, I don't know when, and you hope it's not this season, but he hasn't had a down cycle where he's felt the pressure and that, and then they go to wall or whatever. Like that's the type of thing in a partnership, in a tandem. If a guy has a down cycle, they just go to the other guy and then allow the other guy to get his game in order. But when the pressure cooker ramps up here down the stretch and into the playoffs, all eyes are going to be on both these guys, and there's a lot of pressure on that. And you're right, like this is his first go at it where he's actually going to get the net. I watched him get half a game last year in Edmonton. That was the mop-up game where Edmonton beat Florida bad in that first win.
And everyone knew Bob was going in the
Bob
next
is
game.
going right back in.
Absolutely.
This is Stolar's potential net or Wolves' potential net where there is no, this is on them.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. They got to
else.
perform, man. Exactly. Like and ultimately, we've been saying this for a long, long time. Like that is the one position that can get you into another round by himself, and it's asking a lot. It's not easy, but there have been examples of this in the past where a guy just stood on his head 4 times.
The Hamburglar.
You want to redraw the pie chart?
Yes.
You think I should put goalies
you're saying they're going to
20%?
I mean, you're saying.
But the reason I had him at 20% was because you got 2 tickets.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's if it was one guy, like if it's Vasilevskiy and he's really performing poorly, you're like, man. He's playing, and he's got to get going. The thing is with the Leaf goaltenders is I think Stolarz has the upper hand right now, but Wall could still make a case for it. And if one of them, if not both of them, are feeling pretty good about their game, I'm yes, you're going to have concern come the playoffs, but down the stretch, I don't know how much that's going to overcome the conversations about Matthews or
right.
Who they're going to play in the first round and.
Yeah, they got insurance. You're right. They've got an insurance.
They got some
policy.
insurance. Yeah, like the other guy, it's not a drop off necessarily.
There's no insurance for Auston Matthews not showing up.
That's the point. Like if Matthews can't perform at a top 5 player in the world performance level, Scott Laughton's not doing that.
Yeah.
Like it's not going to happen. No one else on the team can do it.
It's like Johnny said, like when you start looking at breaking down, why aren't they being who they've been in the past? Like, you're taking a half a goal a game, essentially, off your ledger. Yeah. And there's no way to replace it.
It starts at the top, but this is a top-heavy league. It's a star-driven league. Most leagues are. And if your star players are wildly inconsistent or having down seasons, kind of mirrors the team. That's really what it is. Or the team has to, bump it up a little bit. That's the biggest challenge is I think Matthews has lots more to give. You look at Edmonton, McDavid's got a lot more to give. I think there's teams where you're like, okay, I look at that team, they look good on paper, but if the team plays to their capability, and that's what you're going to need.
Yeah, and there are different ways to build teams and different ways to use your money, and some teams, are more ruthless than others. Some teams had different benefits that other teams didn't have, but we just heard Cory Schneider mention Jack Eichel and how good he looked. I found it really interesting. I saw it last night pop up online that Eichel hit 79 points last night.
Career high, wasn't it? Or wasn't it? Sorry, not a career. For Vegas,
team high.
Yes, team
and
high for
that
Vegas.
To me is such an important note to make. That here there's this fascination with 69 goals and 100 points and all this. Vegas has been in the league now for almost a decade. They've been to 2 Cup Finals. They've won 1. They go to the playoffs every year. They're a dominant, like, top 5 team in the league.
Yeah.
The highest point getter at any point in the franchise's relatively young history is 79 points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here it's like, well, if you don't get this from Matthews and you don't get down there, they've never looked at one guy and said, you got to do it.
No,
because
right.
they have depth and they have size and they have good coaching and they've got a variety of goalies that they use. Aiden Hill got a big extension today. Credit to him.
Yeah.
But it's, look at Florida. Like Florida, they've had, Tkachuk can put up points and Barkov can put up points. Reinhart had 50 goals last year. Like they've got examples of that. But this year they don't really. Like you look at the stat sheet this year, that team scares me in terms of how they're built and what they're capable of doing. They don't have guys that are chasing stats this year. Like, let me look at it.
No, they never do.
Yeah.
They've got, like, Reinhardt's got 70 points. He's leading the team in points, 32 goals. Barkov's got 60. Verhaeghe's got 45, and Bennett's got 44. And, like, it's just
a lot of balance there, right?
Just balance, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just a bunch of guys who are good players that can fit a system, that go in and check well, and they forecheck, and they backcheck, and they might make your life difficult, and they commit to a system and they play it.
And it speaks to, Noodles, it speaks to, what was the biggest move of the pre-trade deadline period? It was Colorado deciding they're getting rid of the star because what did Chris McFarland say? We don't have enough depth. We need more depth.
Yeah.
Getting rid of the guy that puts up all these points. He's a legendary playoff performer, but we feel we need more guys.
Yeah.
And
And they brought in 4 new guys.
Exactly.
One guy for 4.
Yeah.
And one guy for 4, and that team is a lot better for it on paper. You gotta back it up, and you always say that, but the team is a lot deeper. But it is the way the team is structured too. Like who makes the most in Florida financially? Is it Bob?
I think
10?
it's Bob at 10. Yeah,
10 plus.
It
Right,
is, 'cause
so
the other
that's
guys
how that
make
team
9.
is built, right? So that's
Yeah.
we talk about it. The Leafs are built differently. There's a guy making, what is it, $14 million?
13 and a half,
13.5
13.25. There's another 2 guys making 11, another guy making 11.5. Willie's making 11.5.
Yeah, you're right. It's a different structure the way that it's built. So they have to have that success the way it's built because the trickle down there's a big drop off.
Yep.
So
absolutely. Mail It In Friday brought to you by Boston Pizza, Canada's favorite sports bar. Enjoy $15 lunch at BP where you get an entree, a side, and a drink. And you'll get it all in 20 minutes or less. So fast lunch doesn't have to be fast food. See you for a $15 fast lunch at your local Boston Pizza. Dear Hayesy-B coming up. The O-Dog will be back on Monday. He'll be disappointed to miss out on this. And we'll tell you about someone we helped out recently. That they followed through with our advice, and they've never been happier.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a real success story for us at Dear Hayesy-B. So we'll tell you about that. We'll get into it. Best bet still to come later in the hour. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2.
People send in a tweet, they write us for our professional advice on life things. Dear Hayesy-B, every morning my boiler has a gas leak. My wife thinks it's the baby.
Dear Hayesy-B.
If you want to come to Hayesy-B, I need honesty from you.
Hazy, you got dumped a lot. Tell me. Tell him.
grown adults with birthdays, it's asinine.
All right, Dear Hayesy-B, brought to you by Boston Pizza, Canada's favorite sports bar. Enjoy $15 lunch at BP, where you get an entree, a side, and a drink, and you'll get it all in 20 minutes or less. So fast lunch doesn't have to be fast food. See you for a $15 fast lunch at your local Boston Pizza.
I got to be honest. I've had somebody walk up to me and say, like, because my one take there, it's like grown adults with birthdays. It's asinine. I've had people like, I celebrated my birthday. I'm like, all right, like, knock it off.
It is a harsh statement, but I appreciate that you got to stay true to who you are, Noodles.
I know.
And listen, I think you can separate if you're turning 40 or 50. But I'm turning 42 this year. I could not care less if anybody on earth knows about it.
I'm with you.
I don't need anyone to, hey, how old are you? 42? No. Like nobody. 42 is the most irrelevant birth date of all time. It's just no one cares. 42? What is 42?
Yeah.
What are you going to have a big, huge party because I'm turning 42?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. So
I'm with you.
I'm with you on that.
Like my birthday wish is leave me alone.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah. Exactly. Hey, if everyone knows, so be it. A couple of people checking in,
That's
all right. That's great.
It's nice to get the couple of texts.
Thanks so much. I appreciate that. But it doesn't have to be.
I'll take a cake. That's it. No singing or anything. I just want some sweets.
Well, you know
like
what,
a cake.
You know what the move is? Because I'm sure you guys see this online. whether it's Facebook, it's more famous for Facebook, but you might get it on Instagram or Twitter, the birthday guy who's like, thanks for all the birthday wishes.
Right.
And then waiting for people to like, oh, happy belated. I meant to, no problem.
Of course,
it's like
your birthday.
Yeah. Like, because it's so clear that you're waiting for more people to jump in.
Exactly.
Thanks so much for the birthday wishes. By the way, if you want to leave a comment below, go ahead. I'll like it a little bit later. All right, we got a couple of Dear Hayesy-Bs here, but Doogie wants to chime in here first.
Oh,
right?
wow.
This is a big development, Noodles, because Doogie has been poking and prodding all afternoon. He said he's got something to do with St. Patrick's Day, I believe, which is technically on Monday. But what do you have for us, Doogie?
All right, Dear Hayesy-B, this is from myself.
Yes.
And talking with my group of friends, they're planning to floor it this St. Patrick's Day weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Saturday, go out, hit the bars. Sunday, do the daytime parties, downtown Toronto, wearing green and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But is it a respectful move to go the third day, the actual day on the Monday? So 3-day bender.
Great
Like, is that a
question.
respectful move?
Well, I think it's a respectful move, but I don't think it's mandatory. Like I don't know if you're a big St. Paddy's Day purist, Dave, because you do get that, I guess from Irish people in particular, where it's like you actually have to go out on the 17th.
Right.
But it's a Monday. That's a terrible night.
Bad night.
No one wants to get together on a Monday.
But
True.
But are people drinking green beer this Saturday night?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
It's this Saturday. What Doogie, what you're saying is like tomorrow, more or less, maybe into Sunday, is the St. Paddy's Day bonanza.
Saturday's
People
the staple.
Everyone in green, everyone pretending it's happening. But then you have to follow up on Monday. Or what if you do, what if people reach out to you, that one booze bag buddy who's like, let's get back together on Monday. And you're like, I don't know, man. But he's like, it's St. Paddy's. We got a tradition here. What's the play?
Yeah, that's tough.
I don't know.
3 is tough. Like, I think you have a big Saturday night, you bleed it into Sunday, but the actual Monday night depends on what's going on. I mean, the Leafs play Monday night.
They do. They got Calgary on Monday night.
Right? So you can go into that. Like I say, if you're committed and you have people involved, people that will go. Doogie's what, 20 years old or something? Like he's going out.
Doogie's not even legal. He's probably got an illegal ID, I would guess.
Yes, and he'll have the cologne going for 3 nights. For me, I say
Irish Spring.
the Irish Spring. I say floor it for 3 nights. Just don't start rolling into the studio and mailing in an effort, because the O-Dog's back next week, and you'll hear it.
He's
You'll
Irish.
get an earful.
He'll have his eyes on you.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think if you're young enough, I think there's something to the tradition of actually, on the St. Patrick's Day. But I think at the same time, if you're gonna commit to it on Saturday, that's probably more than enough. And Doogie was wondering where you draw the line on, because it is a young person's party day.
Yeah.
I find that anyway, where like you look at Halloween, people of all ages get together, dress up, you have different Halloween parties. Christmas parties are actually more for older people than younger people. Like when you're a kid, you're not going to Christmas parties and having a big time. But St. Patrick's Day has basically been for young people and debauchery.
Well, like, don't tell Jack Armstrong.
I guess you're right. Jack is, but
great Irishman.
Does it have to be St. Patty's Day?
He's been
Jack, I think, will do it at any point.
He's been like the Grand Marshal of the St. Patrick's Parade.
Yes.
And like he's not fooling around on St. Patrick's Day.
Right. Yeah, I guess you're right. I guess maybe I'm being an ageist when it comes to St. Patrick's Day.
Hayes.
I hear you. I'm saying personally, it's not a big day for me anymore. It was when I was 18, 19, 20, like early 20s. Mid-20s, it was one of the coolest, best parties of the year. At school, like universities and colleges, it is a massive party day.
Yeah.
Massive. And that's a 3-4 day bender. But now, again, I'm almost 42. I don't care. I'm not going for a Guinness on Monday. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
No chance.
I respect Doogie's ambition, though.
All right.
I mean, going for the hat trick, Monday, or Saturday, Sunday, Monday hat trick.
Okay. All right.
Auston Matthews doesn't have one this year. Maybe Doogie can get one.
Isn't that kind of crazy? Like, Matthews has not scored a hat trick this year. He hasn't had a multi-goal game in almost 2 months.
Yeah.
Since January 16th.
We're just not used to seeing this.
Yeah, last year, he had 3 hat tricks in the first 5 games or whatever it was.
He did.
Yeah,
that's right. It was crazy.
Well, maybe it'll happen tomorrow night. All right, here's one from Gabe in Toronto. Dear Hayesy-B and the boys, going to the Leaf game tomorrow night in the company suite. My boss keeps saying this isn't a work event. It's totally casual. End quote. Should I believe that or put the pedal to the metal? What's the play here?
Okay, I have a slight question, but we can't obviously get him to answer it. It depends on the relationship at work. Do you want them to see you in a different light? Especially if you act differently when you get into the booze and let your hair down, so to say. Mm-hmm. Like that's where, do you want them to look at you differently? Is it a professional relationship, or is there a line you're like, hey, this is good time, Charlie? Because then floor it in the company suite and just act like it's a weekend. But if you feel like that'll change the way they look at you come Monday, you got to have some reservations towards that.
I agree, man. I would use it as a pregame and then filter through who you want to party with the rest of the night and go somewhere else afterwards. Right? Like the game's over by 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
But don't ever trust a boss when they're like, it's not a work thing. Yes, it's a work thing. You're there representing the company. It's the company's suite. Like, you're not showing up in decked out in, green, like St. Patty's gear, buckled. Don't be pre-drinking beforehand. Like, get there, be on your best behavior, sneak in some drinks, have a good time, mingle, but then figure out who you want to have a big night with and get out of there and make sure your boss isn't one of them. That would be my suggestion. Because you're right, Noodles. You don't know exactly what the details are of the work environment. But if they've got a suite at the Leaf game, that would suggest it's pretty corporate.
I was going to say.
Like, this isn't some guys, they're not running a garage sale here.
Well,
this is real life.
There's a reason
stuff.
why the bank on Bay Street that the Leafs play in is not a particularly raucous, rowdy place.
Because of suites like this one.
Because of suites like this, because these are corporate meetings where you got to be on your best behavior because you're with your client or you're with your boss. So you got to take that into account.
Well, and that could be a part of it as well. You get there totally casual, and then you realize that they're kind of entertaining different people.
Right.
Where you found a way to kind of sneak in, but they've also got
their best client.
Some massive client that they're either trying to land or whatever, and you're in there doing keg stands.
Exactly.
That probably will not put you in a great spot.
I guess it depends on the industry you're in, too. Like if you're in the rock and roll industry, maybe you could have a great time.
I guess you're right. If this is a rock band that has the suite, then go ahead and floor
it. Hey, man, times have changed. Back in the journalism business when I started, the editors used to have bottles of whiskey in their desks.
Yeah.
Oh,
man, you'd hear
smoking.
Famously, like play-by-play guys
smoking
would
in
be
the
having
office.
Drinks and color guys bucking games.
I've been
that's a real thing. I know Harry was it.
Ones.
Not Harry. Was it Harry Carey or who's the guy who would have beers?
Harry Carey was. He was the voice of the Cubs forever, and then he was the voice of. He might have done the White Sox on radio, and radio back then was like, man, like by the seventh inning stretch, Harry was buckled.
When I started in this business in the early, I guess it was the early '90s. You could go into some of those booths, and I'm not going to name the play-by-play guys, but they had coolers of beer at their feet, and they're just cracking them one after another.
So they're calling a game
mid-game,
regardless of the sport. They're calling the game, and they're 6 deep by whatever third quarter,
probably first intermission,
second period,
probably first intermission. Noodles.
Yeah,
you should be able to have 4 beer.
Yeah, calling a game. Why can't you have 4 beer?
The calls got a lot better.
That's the thing. I'll bet you went back there and heard like the difference between the first period and the third period. Because you'd hear I've heard stories. I think we all have within the industry of like famous broadcasters.
Oh yeah,
who like we're not. You can't be inebriated to the point where you can't speak.
Yeah,
but
slurring.
It would be like if you went back and listened to the tape, something going
happily
on
buzzed.
He's enjoying the game.
That's right.
He's having a really good time. So you're suggesting that doesn't happen anymore, Noodles?
Well, I never happened on my watch. No, I mean,
I'm just asking.
Crazy.
No, you couldn't get away with that now, man.
No, of course not.
You couldn't get away with it now.
Well, that's another thing. It's just standard. Like society has changed so much.
I will say this. I have a friend, and we went to a birthday party in Miami recently, and it was at his house. So he has a fully stocked bar. He's wealthy. He's got a yacht. He's got all these things, right? He pulls out a flask. I haven't seen a flask in forever.
Yeah,
like
those
that
really
was
are a
old
sign
school,
of things,
right?
aren't they?
The old flask,
and
he had drink it out of a flask. I'm like, that is that is something else. Like that was like Johnny Carson type of thing. You know,
Yeah.
Dean Martin, all of those guys. I feel like those guys would have flasks.
Absolutely.
So.
Oh yeah, man, the Rat Pack. Although I couldn't, like, I don't know if this is true or not, but I had read that Dean Martin didn't actually drink, or at one point he stopped drinking, and it was always like, you know, he had apple juice or water or something in there, and it was
so
kind
it
of
was an act.
Yeah, although I don't know, because it was one hell of an act, man. It seems like those guys were having a great time.
Drank and smoked at Sinatra and Sammy
those
Davis
guys
Jr.
They mostly stopped in the grave.
Yeah,
like that was what stopped them.
They just kept going.
Yeah.
They kept going. Well, someone just wrote me and said Elvis was 42 when he died.
Wow.
And so he said, hey, you guys, it's a big birthday, I guess. So if I'm turning 42 and Elvis,
kind of morbid.
That's a bit of a morbid conversation. Thank you for
one.
that. I guess I'll have a big year.
There you go.
I'll have a big year. All right, let me get to one more here. Who has written us here? This is from Jake Bowmanville. He said, I heard your chat earlier this week about Shorts Guy and wondering what the move is when it comes to Convertible Guy. The reason I ask is my brother just picked up a Mustang Convertible this winter, and he wants to take it for a spin this weekend, top down. Is this nuts or what?
Wow.
It does seem a bit extreme in March. Like, you know where I stand on Shorts Guy. I think it's absurd behavior to be wearing shorts in March. And it was really nice today. It's supposed to be actually pretty warm tomorrow. I think in
16.
Toronto. Maybe 16, possibly a little windy at times, a little bit of rain. I get it. You know, your brother, obviously, he's jacked. It's a big purchase. This is a big – once you become, like, Mustang Convertible Guy, that's a that's a lifestyle, right? And what this guy's brother is trying to tell the world is, I'm here. I wonder if he's recently divorced or something. I need to find out that brother's story because something happened here for the Mustang to get picked up, and he wants to get out there and send a vibe. I would say just buy your time. You know, wait till it's actually truly beautiful. I'm not a big car guy. Noodles, I don't know if you're a car guy. Dave, if you're a car guy.
I'm not.
But convertibles in March, again, it's a lot like Shorts Guy. Just don't do it.
But he's pot committed, though. That's the thing. He bought a Mustang. He's excited about the convertible.
Yeah.
I say do it. The problem is you start – the problem –
Why does the brother have to come for a spin, though? That's what I want to know. Why can't he be like, I get it's a big moment for you, but I don't really want to do that.
Just don't drive. Like, my thing is, I always see it, and you kind of chuckle. Convertible guy gets caught when it starts raining and he has to pull over. The top is going up, and they're just getting pissed on the rain, and you got to you're trying to beat the rain. But outside of that, go live your life. I mean, go ride with your brother. He's pot committed on it.
Go for a spin.
Are people,
all right, you're supporting it, Dave. You support that type of activity or what?
I just looked at the forecast, and I'm concerned about what Noodles is talking about here. We're looking at like a 90% chance of rain on Sunday.
Yeah. So that guy, he's going to ruin the upholstery of his new car.
Careful. Slow the roll.
That's what's going to happen.
There'll be plenty of sunny days ahead.
That's what I'm saying.
Don't jump the gun.
We're almost there. It's actually a very exciting time of year.
Yeah.
It's really, the snow is quickly leaving us. Like I think by Sunday it's probably gone in the city. And we're getting there. The spring is right around the corner. It's going to be beautiful. The Mustang. Golf is like 2-3 weeks away.
Yeah.
Right? There'll be some tracks open in the next 2 weeks. So I know we're itching to get out, but leave the top on for a couple more weeks. Convertible top-down guy. Just like motorcycle guy. Like motorcycle guy is dying to get out right now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
that's a little bit more,
Well, because it's still icy and people aren't prepared for you, too. Like, people still have winter tires on and motorcycle guys flying by you. Yeah. And we're not in the headspace of motorcycle guy living amongst us yet. So just ease into society.
If you live in the city, you know e-bike guy's been around all winter.
Yeah.
That's a big problem. E-bike guy's a big problem.
He's really bothering a lot of people. E-bike guy bothers a lot.
No lights.
Yeah, just bombing right through.
Not bombing. 30 miles an hour.
Sidewalk, onto the sidewalk, onto the road.
Oh, whatever he needs to do. Yeah. 25 pounds of food in the back. Just bombing around the city.
I respect the hustle, but be careful out there.
Just, maybe head on a swivel. Yeah. Like, look both ways.
Maybe a headlight. Working a headlight and a taillight.
And if it's snowing outside, maybe don't do that.
Yeah.
Like, just take it easy. All right, Best Bets powered by FanDuel still to come. We'll wrap up a busy afternoon, look ahead to a big one tomorrow night for the Leafs, big one for the Raptors. Two very different outcomes on the line. OverDrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, today's Best Bets powered by FanDuel. Make your picks and assemble a same-game parlay in seconds on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. I'm on the Oilers tonight. McDavid, 2+ points. Draisaitl, 2+ points. They have to have one against Pierre Engvall and the Islanders tonight. They have to have one, and I believe they will.
Pierre Engvall.
Best Bets powered by FanDuel. Live same-game parlays are now available for every NHL game on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Please play responsibly. 18+, physically located in Ontario. Special shout-out, Noodles.
Yes. So, Frank Cicerello, we're thinking of you, but
yes.
Our buddy Sam, that's his father, goes to the hospital to visit him, and his dad is bragging that his son works with TSN, and there's a gentleman in the bed next to him. He hasn't even seen him. It's curtained off. And he goes, "You work for TSN? Hayes is a fraud." He yells it. And they're both of their names are Frank, so I'm calling it Frank Costanza and Frank Cicerello are sitting talking about Hayes is a fraud.
Wow.
And it was unbelievable. Apparently, and Sam's like, "I'd never seen anything or heard anything about it." So pretty funny story.
Look
there.
at us bringing people together. We're thinking of the Franks.
There you go.
Yeah,
we love
exactly.
it. And shout out Josh Coleman, who took our advice, Dear Hayesy-B, to go to the players with his wife and his young child. They're at the players taking pictures right now.
Wow.
It's the best.
He's amazing. Shout out to Josh Coleman. Dear Hayesy-B helping people. Hayes is a fraud helping people. Pie charts helping people. There's a lot of things that are very, very positive about this show right now.
Changing lives.
Yeah. And it's going to be a good one tomorrow night. Lisa sends. I'm going down. I'll be in the building. They always play well when I'm in the building. They always play well when I'm there, so I look forward to it. All right, Dave, good seeing you. Thanks for doing this. Noodles.
Thanks to
everyone behind the scenes for helping out. We appreciate it. Everyone for tuning in today. TV, radio, podcast, web. We appreciate that. We're out of here. Enjoy your evenings. Enjoy the games tonight. We're back tomorrow at
4 p.m.
We'll chat
then.